Ambassador Marcus Chen adjusted his black diplomatic suit one final time before stepping into the crystalline halls of the Galactic Council chambers. The fabric, woven with protective fibers and embedded with translation nanites, felt heavier today than usual. Perhaps it was the weight of what he carried beneath the formal exterior, or perhaps it was the knowledge that today would change everything. The council chamber stretched before him like a cathedral of alien architecture. Floating platforms held representatives from across the galaxy, each species more bizarre than the last. The Zephyrians with their translucent wings buzzed nervously in their atmospheric pods. The rock-like Granathis shifted their massive forms on reinforced platforms. The ethereal voidlings flickered in and out of visible spectrum, their presence marked only by the shimmer of contained energy fields. At the center of it all sat the High Arbiter, a creature so ancient that its original species had been forgotten by most. Its form was a shifting mass of biomechanical appendages, eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, and a voice that carried the authority of eons. Marcus walked calmly down the central aisle, his polished shoes clicking against the quantum-crystallized floor. Every step echoed through the chamber, and he could feel thousands of alien eyes tracking his movement. The human delegation had been called to answer for their crimes, to face judgment for their actions on the Outer Rim worlds. The charges were serious. Humanity stood accused of violating 17 different galactic treaties, of weapons development beyond approved parameters, and most damning of all, of preparing for aggressive expansion into protected space. The evidence, they claimed, was overwhelming. What they didn't know was that Marcus Chen wasn't just a diplomat. What they couldn't see beneath his perfectly tailored suit was 30 years of military service, scars from battles across a dozen worlds, and modifications that made him more than human. They saw a man in formal wear. They didn't see death walking among them. Representative of the species designated human, the High Arbiter's voice boomed through translation matrices. You stand before this council accused of crimes against galactic peace. How do you answer these charges? Marcus stopped at the speaking platform, a small circular stage that seemed insignificant compared to the floating masses of the other representatives. He looked up calmly, his hands clasped behind his back, and spoke in clear, measured tones. Honorable Arbiter, esteemed representatives, I answer these charges with a simple truth. Humanity has violated no treaties because we never agreed to your terms in the first place. A wave of shocked sounds rippled through the chamber. The translation system struggled to convert the various expressions of outrage, confusion, and disbelief into comprehensible formats. Wings fluttered, carapaces clicked, and energy fields fluctuated wildly. The High Arbiter's eyes focused on Marcus with newfound attention. Explain yourself, human. Your species sent diplomatic envoys. Agreements were reached. Documents were signed. Marcus smiled, an expression that looked polite but carried an edge that made several nearby representatives shift uncomfortably. With respect, Arbiter, those envoys represented only a small portion of our species. They had no authority to speak for all of humanity. Earth sent diplomats, yes, but Earth is only one world. You never contacted the Colonial Authority, the Free Worlds Alliance, or the Independent Systems Coalition. The chamber erupted in chaos. The Galactic Council had spent decades believing they had successfully contained the human threat through careful negotiations and restrictive treaties. They had limited human expansion, controlled their technology development, and kept them confined to what they believed was a small cluster of primitive worlds. Impossible, declared the Voidling representative, its energy form pulsing with agitation. Our surveys show human presence on only 12 worlds. Primitive chemical propulsion, basic energy weapons, simple agriculture. Marcus's smile widened. Your survey saw exactly what we wanted you to see. While your attention was focused on Earth and its immediate neighbors, the rest of humanity was busy elsewhere. We've had faster-than-light travel for over 2 centuries. We've colonized not 12 worlds but 1,200. Our technology didn't stop advancing just because Earth's diplomats signed your papers. The High Arbiter's form shifted, mechanical appendages adjusting as it processed this information. You speak of deception on a galactic scale. This cannot be verified, can't it? Marcus reached into his jacket pocket, a movement so casual that none of the security systems registered it as a threat. He withdrew a small data crystal no larger than his thumb. This contains the complete records of human expansion, technological development, and military capabilities. I think you'll find it quite enlightening. He tossed the crystal onto the platform where it projected a holographic star map. The display showed the galaxy as the Council knew it, with human presence marked in small red dots around Earth. Then the view expanded. Red dots spread across the spiral arms like an infection. Hundreds of systems, thousands of worlds, entire sectors that the Council had never bothered to survey because they seemed too distant or too dangerous. Mining operations in black hole event horizons, cities built in the coronas of stars, vast shipyards hidden in the void between galaxies. Technological assessment beginning, Marcus continued conversationally, as if discussing the weather. Quantum manipulation drives capable of crossing galactic distances in days. Weapons that can crack moons. Defensive systems that make your best shields look like soap bubbles. And all of it built while your treaties restricted a few border worlds that represent less than 1% of actual human territory. The chamber had gone deadly silent. Even the constant hum of life support systems seemed muted. Marcus could feel the fear beginning to spread. Could see it in the way representatives huddled together on their platforms, in the rapid communications flashing between different species. You wanted to control humanity, Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly through the sudden quiet. You thought you could contain us, limit us, make us into just another minor species in your grand design. You made two critical errors. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. First, you assumed that because we looked weak, we were weak. Second, you assumed that because we seemed divided, we couldn't unite when threatened. The High Arbiter's voice, when it came, was carefully controlled. What is your purpose here, human? Why reveal this now? Marcus straightened his tie, the gesture somehow more ominous than any weapon could have been. Because 12 hours ago, your fleets moved against what you believed were defenseless human colonies. You declared war on humanity based on false information and careful misdirection. You wanted to eliminate the human problem once and for all. The silence stretched until it felt like a physical weight. The problem is, Marcus concluded, we've been ready for this day for a very long time. Admiral Sarah Vega stood on the bridge of the UHS Retribution, watching through the massive viewports as the Galactic Council's Third Fleet approached what they believed was a helpless human mining colony. The enemy ships were impressive by most standards, sleek vessels that gleamed with energy shielding and bristled with particle cannons. Their formation was textbook perfect, a classic pincer movement designed to overwhelm defenders quickly and efficiently. What they didn't know was that they were flying directly into the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. Admiral, reported Lieutenant Torres from the tactical station. Council fleet is holding formation. 237 vessels ranging from destroyers to their flagship dreadnought. They're maintaining standard approach vectors. Sarah nodded, her fingers drumming against the armrest of her command chair. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their movements precise and unhurried. Unlike the gleaming alien vessels approaching them, the human ships looked almost primitive. The Retribution's hull was scarred metal and functional design, with none of the elegant curves favored by other species. It looked exactly like what the Council expected from humanity, crude, outdated, and desperate. Appearances could be very deceiving. Time to effective weapons range? Sarah asked. 14 minutes at current approach. Speed, came the reply. Good. Signal the rest of Ghost Fleet. Maintain stealth protocols until my mark. Throughout the asteroid field that surrounded the mining colony, space itself seemed to shimmer and bend. What appeared to be empty void was actually hiding over 400 human vessels, each one equipped with quantum masking technology that made them effectively invisible to the Council's sensors. The aliens saw one small colony ship and a handful of cargo haulers. They had no idea they were about to engage the largest concentration of human military power ever assembled. Sarah's mind wandered briefly to the conversation taking place simultaneously in the Council chambers. Marcus Chen would be revealing humanity's true scope right about now, showing them the extent of their expansion and technological advancement. The timing had to be perfect. The Council needed to understand the magnitude of their mistake, just as their fleets were learning it firsthand. Admiral, incoming transmission from the Council flagship, Torres reported. Put it through. The main screen shimmered and resolved into the image of a Kralian war admiral, its insectoid features arranged in what passed for a sneer among its species. The Kralians were the Council's primary military force, responsible for enforcing peace across the galaxy through superior firepower. They had never lost a major engagement. Human vessel, the Kralian's translated voice buzzed with mechanical precision. You are harboring criminals wanted by the Galactic Council. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded, or we will take your ship by force. Sarah stood slowly, smoothing down her uniform. Unlike Marcus's diplomatic attire, her clothing was purely functional. Reinforced fabric designed for combat, with integrated armor plating and life support systems. She looked every inch the career military officer she was. War Admiral Jektar, she said, having memorized the personnel files of every enemy commander. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. We're not harboring criminals. We are the criminals. The Kralian's compound eyes glittered with confusion. Explain yourself, human. Every treaty your council forced on humanity was signed under duress. Every restriction you placed on our development was violated within days of being imposed. Every peaceful gesture we made was carefully calculated to keep you looking in the wrong direction while we prepared for this moment. Sarah gestured to her tactical officer, who began transmitting data to the Council fleet. What you're receiving now are the complete specifications of our current military capabilities. I suggest you review them quickly. On screens across the Council fleet, human technology blazed in stark detail. Ships that could phase between dimensions, weapons that fired concentrated dark matter, defensive fields powered by contained singularities, manufacturing capabilities that could build a dreadnought in hours using nothing but asteroid debris. Impossible, War Admiral Jektar stammered. Our intelligence indicates your species barely achieved interstellar flight 50 years ago. Sarah's smile was cold and professional. Your intelligence was carefully managed by our deception division. Every survey team you sent to human space was guided to exactly what we wanted them to see. Every piece of technology you observed was either obsolete or deliberately simplified. We've been playing a very long game, War Admiral. The silence on the communication channel stretched for nearly 30 seconds before the Kralian's voice returned, now carrying a note of uncertainty. Even if your claims are accurate, you face the combined might of 17 species. Your forces cannot hope to match our numbers, can't we? Sarah nodded to her communications officer. Signal Ghost Fleet, drop stealth. The space around the Council fleet erupted with energy signatures as 400 human vessels materialized from apparent nothingness. The asteroid field revealed itself to be a massive shipyard, with construction bays and defensive platforms scattered throughout the rocky debris. What had appeared to be a small mining operation was actually one of humanity's largest military installations. But that wasn't the real surprise. War Admiral, Sarah continued conversationally, you're correct that we can't match your numbers. That's why we're not going to try. She touched a control on her chair, and the main screen switched to a tactical display showing the entire star system. Red dots began appearing at the system's edge, hundreds of them, streaming in through hyperspace jump points. Those are reinforcements arriving from the Terran Defense Fleet, the Colonial Guard, the Free Companies, and about 30 other human military organizations. Current count is just over 2,000 vessels, with more arriving every few minutes. The tactical display updated in real time, showing wave after wave of human ships emerging from hyperspace. Each group was different, some sleek and modern, others looking like mobile fortresses, still others that seemed to be more energy than matter. But all of them were moving with coordinated precision toward the Council fleet. You see, War Admiral, we've spent the last 50 years preparing for the day when the Council would try to eliminate what it saw as a threat to galactic order. We knew this moment would come because we've studied your history. You've done this before to dozens of species that grew too quickly or developed too independently. Sarah began walking toward the viewport, her hands clasped behind her back in a gesture that unconsciously mirrored Marcus Chen's posture in the Council chambers. The difference is that those species tried to fight you on your terms. Using your rules, accepting your definition of honorable warfare, we decided to take a different approach. The tactical display now showed over 3,000 human vessels surrounding the Council fleet, but the numbers kept climbing as more ships continued to arrive. Surrender, War Admiral. Order your fleet to stand down and prepare to be escorted to a secure location where they'll be well treated according to the laws of war. You have 30 seconds to comply. War Admiral Jektar's image flickered as emergency communications flooded his ship's channels. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy of human fleets emerging from hiding, revealing themselves at last after decades of careful concealment. "And if we refuse?" the Kralian asked. Sarah's expression didn't change, but her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Then you'll discover why the rest of the galaxy should have been afraid of us from the very beginning." The 30 seconds passed in absolute silence. War Admiral Jektar stared at his tactical displays with growing horror as more human vessels continued to materialize around his fleet. His sensor operators were reporting impossible readings, ships that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, weapons that registered as pure mathematical concepts rather than physical objects, defensive systems that appeared to be rewriting the laws of physics in localized areas. "War Admiral," his tactical officer reported, voice tight with barely controlled panic. "The human vessels are maintaining position, but we're detecting massive energy buildups across their entire fleet. Whatever they're preparing to do, it's on a scale we've never encountered." Jektar's mandibles clicked nervously as he processed the situation. The Council's Third Fleet was considered one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy, capable of conquering entire star systems single-handedly. Now it was surrounded, outnumbered 10 to 1 and facing technology that made their most advanced systems look like primitive tools. On the human flagship, Admiral Vega waited with the patience of a predator. Her crew monitored the Council fleet's communications, listening to the growing desperation in alien voices as ship commanders realized the true scope of their situation. "Admiral," reported her intelligence officer, "we're intercepting communications between the Council fleet and their high command. They're requesting immediate reinforcement from the Second and Fourth fleets." "Response time?" Sarah asked. "Minimum 6 hours, assuming they drop everything and make emergency jumps." Sarah nodded. 6 hours was more than enough time for the first phase of humanity's response to the Council's aggression. Around the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out as human fleets revealed themselves and moved against Council forces that had been positioned to attack what they believed were defenseless colonies. "Signal all vessels," Sarah commanded. "Begin demonstration protocol." Throughout the human fleet, weapon systems came online with a sound like reality tearing. The first indication the Council ships had of what was about to happen was when their sensor arrays began detecting impossible energy readings. The space around the human vessels started to warp and bend as exotic matter was manipulated on a massive scale. The demonstration began with the smallest human ships. Corvettes no larger than Council shuttles suddenly blazed with power as their quantum cannons fired. The shots didn't target any enemy vessels, instead striking apparently empty space. Where the beams hit, space itself began to unravel, creating expanding spheres of pure void that consumed everything they touched. "Energy levels impossible," Jektar's sensor operator reported. "Those weapons are generating more power than our entire fleet combined." But the corvettes were just the opening act. The human destroyers fired next, their weapons creating cascading waves of gravitational distortion that twisted nearby asteroids into impossible shapes before reducing them to component atoms. The cruisers followed with particle beams that seemed to ignore the normal rules of physics, bending around obstacles and striking targets from directions that shouldn't have been possible. Finally, the human dreadnoughts revealed their capabilities. Sarah's own flagship, the Retribution, powered up its primary weapon system. The massive cannon that ran the length of the ship began to glow with contained starfire, as it drew power directly from a captured quantum singularity housed deep in the vessel's core. "War Admiral," Sarah's voice came over the communication channel. Calm and professional despite the awesome display of destruction around them, "what you're seeing is roughly 1% of our fleet's actual capabilities. These are demonstration shots, designed to show you what we could do rather than what we will do." The Retribution's main cannon fired, sending a beam of pure energy toward a distant moon. The shot took 3 seconds to reach its target. When it hit, the moon simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not shattered, not vaporized. It was erased from reality so completely that space-time bent inward to fill the void where it had been. "Impossible," Jektar whispered, his translator barely picking up the sound. "Difficult, perhaps," Sarah replied, having heard him clearly through the human fleet's advanced sensor systems, "but not impossible. We've had a lot of time to prepare, War Admiral." While the Council was focused on maintaining the status quo, humanity was focused on survival. Around them, the demonstration continued, Human ships revealed technology after technology that shouldn't have existed according to galactic scientific understanding. Matter conversion systems that could turn asteroid debris into new warships in minutes. Defensive shields that existed in pocket dimensions, making them impossible to penetrate from normal space. Stealth systems so advanced that they could make entire fleets invisible to any known detection method. The question now, Sarah continued, is what happens next? Your fleet is surrounded and outgunned. Your reinforcements are hours away and will face the same situation when they arrive. Your government is just now learning that everything they thought they knew about humanity was carefully constructed fiction. She paused, allowing the weight of the situation to settle on the enemy commander. But here's what's really important, War Admiral. Despite everything you've just seen, despite the fact that we could erase your entire fleet from existence with less effort than it takes to breathe, we're not going to do that. Do you know why? Jektar remained silent, his compound eyes fixed on the tactical displays that showed his fleet completely surrounded by vessels that could apparently rewrite the fundamental laws of physics. Because unlike the Galactic Council, humanity doesn't believe in conquest through fear. We don't want to rule the galaxy, and we don't want to eliminate species that oppose us. We just want to be left alone to develop and expand as we see fit. Sarah's image on the Council fleet's main screen was replaced by a detailed tactical analysis of the human fleet's capabilities. The data was staggering. Weapons that could strip the electrons from atoms across interstellar distances, defensive systems that could survive the explosion of a star, propulsion technology that allowed instantaneous travel between any 2 points in the galaxy. This demonstration is being transmitted to every major power in the galaxy, Sarah explained. Within the hour, everyone will know exactly what humanity is capable of. The age of the Galactic Council determining who can expand where and when is over. War Admiral Jektar finally found his voice. What do you want from us? Safe passage for our forces, recognition of human sovereignty over our claimed territories, and a formal apology from the Council for this unprovoked attack. In return, we'll release your fleet unharmed and establish formal, diplomatic relations based on mutual respect rather than enforced submission. The silence stretched for nearly a full minute before the Kralian responded. And if the Council refuses these terms? Sarah's smile was visible even through the communication link, and it was not a pleasant expression. Then the galaxy will learn what happens when you try to exterminate the species that calls itself humanity. War Admiral, your people have survived for millions of years by being the biggest predators in their environment. You've built an empire on the principle that might makes right. The tactical display updated again, showing human fleets emerging from hiding places across the galaxy. The scale was breathtaking. Thousands upon thousands of vessels revealing themselves simultaneously, each group positioned to neutralize Council forces that had been deployed against human targets. The problem is that you never encountered a species that spent centuries preparing to be bigger predators than you. This isn't conquest, War Admiral. This is evolution in action. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, the revelations were spreading like wildfire through the assembled representatives. Marcus Chen stood calmly at the center of the chaos, watching as species that had dominated the galaxy for millennia came to terms with the fact that they had been systematically deceived by what they considered a primitive. Sharta the High Arbiter's ancient form was completely still, its mechanical appendages frozen in place as it processed the incoming data streams from across the galaxy. Reports flooded in from every sector where Council forces had moved against human targets, and in every case the story was the same. Overwhelming human superiority, fleets that materialized from nowhere, technology that defied accepted scientific principles. This is impossible, declared the Etherian representative, its gaseous form flickering with agitation. Our science divisions have studied human development for decades. Your species showed no signs of advanced physics comprehension, no evidence of exotic matter manipulation, no indication of military expansion beyond your local cluster. Marcus turned toward the Etherian platform with the same calm expression he had maintained throughout the proceedings. Your science division saw exactly what our psychological warfare specialist wanted them to see. Every sample you collected was carefully prepared. Every demonstration of our technology was deliberately limited. Every scientific paper published by human researchers was reviewed by our intelligence services before release. He gestured toward the holographic display that still showed the true extent of human expansion. What you're looking at represents the largest intelligence operation in galactic history. For over 2 centuries, every interaction between humanity and the broader galaxy has been carefully orchestrated to maintain the illusion of a young, weak species struggling to achieve basic interstellar capability. The Voidling representative pulsed with energy as it spoke. The resource requirements alone would be staggering. To maintain such deception while simultaneously developing advanced technology and expanding across hundreds of systems would require coordination. Impossible for a fragmented species. Who says we're fragmented? Marcus asked mildly. The chamber fell silent again as the implications of that simple question sank in. The Galactic Council's entire strategy for dealing with humanity had been based on the assumption that humans were divided into competing factions that could be played against each other. The careful diplomatic maneuvering, the trade agreements that favored some human groups over others, the political pressure applied to keep human expansion limited, all of it had been predicated on the belief that humanity couldn't present a unified front. The Colonial Authority, the Free Worlds Alliance, the Independent Systems Coalition, Marcus continued conversationally. These aren't competing governments fighting for control of human space. They're administrative divisions of a single civilization, each one specialized for different aspects of human expansion and development. He touched a control on his wrist, and the holographic display updated to show the true structure of human space. Instead of the fragmented, chaotic expansion the Council expected from a young species, the pattern revealed itself as precisely organized and methodical. Economic zones, military sectors, research areas, and industrial centers were all clearly delineated and efficiently managed. The Colonial Authority handles expansion into new systems. The Free Worlds Alliance manages economic development and trade. The Independent Systems Coalition oversees military affairs and defense. From your perspective, they appeared to be separate entities with conflicting interests. From our perspective, they're departments of a single government working toward the same goals. The Granathi representative, its rock-like form grinding as it shifted position, spoke in a voice like grinding stone. Such coordination would require a level of social evolution that our sociologists deemed impossible for a species your age. Young civilizations inevitably fragment as they expand beyond their homeworld. Marcus smiled, and for the first time, there was genuine warmth in the expression. That's where you made your fundamental error in understanding humanity. You assume that because we appear young, we think young. You never considered that we might have a very different relationship with time than most species. He began walking slowly around the speaking platform, his movements casual but somehow predatory. Humans have always been planners. We think in terms of generations, not just individual lifespans. When we first encountered evidence that we weren't alone in the galaxy, our response wasn't to immediately seek contact. Our response was to prepare. The holographic display shifted again, showing a timeline of human development. But instead of the rapid, chaotic progress the Council expected, it revealed centuries of methodical, coordinated advancement. First contact protocols were established before we ever met another species. Deception strategies were developed and tested. False technological demonstrations were prepared and rehearsed. We created entire fake research programs designed to convince observers that we were struggling with problems we had actually solved decades earlier. Marcus stopped walking and looked directly at the High Arbiter. You want to know how we coordinated such an effort across so many worlds in so many years? The same way humans have always coordinated large-scale projects. We made it our culture. The implications were staggering. The Council had encountered hundreds of species over its long history, and in every case the pattern was the same. Young civilizations were chaotic, fragmented, and predictable. They fought among themselves, made impulsive decisions, and could be easily manipulated through careful application of pressure and incentives. Every human child learns about the long plan from the moment they can understand complex concepts. Marcus continued. Every school, every university, every research institution, every military academy teaches the same fundamental principle. Humanity's survival depends on being underestimated until we're strong enough to reveal our true capabilities. The Voidling representative flickered with what might have been confusion. Such indoctrination would create a rigid, inflexible society incapable of innovation or adaptation. Would it? Marcus asked. Or would it create a society so focused on long-term survival that it becomes incredibly good at both innovation and adaptation. When your entire culture is built around the idea that you must be better than everyone else while appearing weaker, you tend to get very creative very quickly. Real-time reports continued flooding into the council chambers from across the galaxy. Fleet after fleet of human vessels was revealing itself, each group demonstrating technology that shouldn't have existed. But more disturbing than the technology was the coordination. Every human action was perfectly timed, every revelation calculated for maximum psychological impact. "The fleet's engaging your forces right now," Marcus said, as if reading their thoughts. "Are following battle plans that were developed 50 years ago. The technology they're demonstrating was specifically chosen to create the maximum shock value without revealing our actual current capabilities. Even this conversation, even my presence here today, was planned and rehearsed before some of your species even knew humans existed." The High Arbiter finally moved, its ancient eyes focusing on Marcus with newfound respect and no small amount of fear. "You speak of planning that spans centuries. No species has ever demonstrated such long-term coordination. No species has ever needed to," Marcus replied simply. "Most civilizations develop in isolation until they're powerful enough to defend themselves. Humanity developed knowing that more advanced species were watching, evaluating, and preparing to eliminate us if we became a threat. That knowledge shaped every decision we made." He straightened his tie again, the gesture now clearly recognizable as a nervous habit that he had learned to control and weaponize. "The question now is what happens next. Your fleets are surrounded and outgunned. Your intelligence services are learning that everything they thought they knew about human capabilities was wrong. Your entire strategy for maintaining galactic stability has been built on false information." Marcus looked around the chamber, making eye contact with representatives from every major species. "Humanity is offering the Galactic Council a choice. Accept us as equals, recognize our sovereignty over our claimed territories, and establish diplomatic relations based on mutual respect. Or continue treating us as a threat to be contained, and discover what happens when a species that has spent centuries preparing for war decides it's time to stop hiding." The emergency session of the Galactic Council's Inner Circle convened in a chamber that had not been used for over 3,000 years. Deep beneath the main assembly hall, protected by layers of quantum shielding and temporal barriers, 12 of the galaxy's most powerful beings gathered to discuss what many were already calling the end of the Galactic Order. High Arbiter Kel'Thuzad materialized first, its ancient form more solid and defined than it appeared in public sessions. The entity that had guided galactic policy for over 10 millennia was revealing its true appearance for the first time in centuries, a fusion of organic intelligence and mechanical perfection that had transcended its original species so long ago that even it sometimes forgot what it had once been. The Etherian Prime Minister followed, its gaseous form compressed into a containment field that allowed for more precise communication. The Kralian War Marshal appeared next, its insectoid features scarred from battles across a dozen campaigns. One by one, the true rulers of galactic civilization assembled to face a crisis that threatened everything they had built. "Report," the High Arbiter commanded. War Marshal Jektar, recently returned from the disaster at the mining colony, spoke first. Total human fleet strength now estimated at over 15,000 vessels across all sectors. Technology assessment indicates capabilities beyond our current understanding of physics. Casualty reports from initial engagements show 0 losses for human forces, while our ships that attempted to resist were erased. Erased? The Etherian Prime Minister's form flickered with agitation. "Not destroyed," Jektar clarified. "Removed from existence so completely that our sensors can find no trace of wreckage, no energy signatures, no indication they were ever there. The humans appear to have weaponized entropy itself." The voidling Empress, a being of pure energy contained within crystalline matrices, pulsed with what might have been confusion. "Our xenobiologists insisted that humans were incapable of such technological advancement. The physiological limitations of carbon-based neural networks should have prevented the kind of abstract thinking required for exotic physics manipulation. The Yaoi xenobiologists were wrong," stated the Granathi stone speaker, its massive form grinding as it shifted position. "The humans never showed us their true neural capacity. Every biological sample, every brain scan, Every psychological evaluation was carefully manipulated to show us exactly what they wanted us to see. High Arbiter Kel'Thuzad processed this information with mechanical precision. Preliminary analysis suggests that human deception capabilities exceed our previous estimates by several orders of magnitude. The question now is determining their true intentions. A new voice spoke from the shadows at the edge of the chamber. Their intentions are exactly what they've stated them to be. The assembled rulers turned toward the sound, energy weapons and defensive fields activating automatically before they recognized the speaker. Marcus Chen stepped into the light, his diplomatic suit now revealing modifications that allowed him to survive in the chamber's hostile environment without apparent difficulty. "How did you get past our security?" the war marshal demanded. Marcus smiled. "The same way we got past your intelligence services, your military patrols, and your scientific surveys. We've been here all along. You just never thought to look properly." The High Arbiter's sensors focused on the human, analyzing and reanalyzing his presence. "Impossible. This chamber is protected by quantum barriers that prevent unauthorized entry by any known technology." Any known technology. Marcus agreed, the operative word being known. Humanity has been developing in secret for centuries, remember? We've had a lot of time to figure out how to go places we're not supposed to be. He walked calmly to the center of the chamber, seemingly unaffected by the gravitational anomalies and energy fields that made the space lethal to most organic life. "But I'm not here to demonstrate human superiority. I'm here because this conversation needs to happen, and it needs to happen now, before fear drives you to make decisions that will be catastrophic for everyone involved." The Voidling Empress pulsed with indignation. "You dare to threaten the inner circle?" "I'm not threatening anyone," Marcus replied calmly. "I'm trying to prevent a war that will devastate the galaxy. Because here's what you need to understand. What you've seen so far is humanity showing restraint." He gestured, and holographic displays materialized around the chamber, showing real-time tactical assessments from across the galaxy. Right now, human fleets are positioned to neutralize every major Council military installation simultaneously. We have weapons targeted at the homeworlds of all 17 member species. We possess the capability to disrupt the economic networks that hold galactic civilization together. The displays updated, showing weapon systems that operated on principles the Council's best scientists couldn't even comprehend. Planet crackers that could shatter worlds with directed gravitational waves. Starkillers that could trigger premature nova explosions. Reality bombs that could erase entire star systems from existence. But we haven't used any of these capabilities, Marcus continued. Despite having the element of surprise, despite having overwhelming tactical advantage, despite having every justification for preemptive strikes against an enemy that declared war on us. Do you know why? The chamber was silent except for the hum of containment, fields and the subtle vibrations of the quantum barriers because humanity learned something from studying galactic history that apparently the rest of you never did. Empires built on fear and domination always collapse eventually. Always. The strong prey on the weak until someone stronger comes along. And then the cycle repeats. Marcus turned slowly, making eye contact with each of the rulers in turn. Humanity doesn't want to be another empire. We want to be something new. A civilization that's strong enough to protect itself, but wise enough not to use that strength to dominate others. The High Arbiter's mechanical voice carried a note of skepticism. You speak of wisdom, yet your species has demonstrated a capacity for deception that borders on the pathological. How can we trust anything you say? Because, Marcus replied, we're about to do something that no species in galactic history has ever done when it achieved overwhelming military superiority. We're going to give you a choice. The holographic displays changed again, showing detailed technical specifications for human weapons and defensive systems. Not simplified demonstrations or carefully edited summaries, but complete, unredacted technical manuals that would allow any species to understand exactly how human technology worked. We're releasing all of our technological developments to the galactic scientific community, Marcus announced. Every innovation, every breakthrough, every advancement we've made over the past 2 centuries, free of charge with no restrictions available to everyone. The implications were staggering. Species that had spent millennia trying to develop faster-than-light communication would suddenly have access to quantum entanglement networks, Civilizations struggling with energy production would gain access to controlled singularity reactors. Military forces using chemical propulsion would be able to build reality-warping engines. Impossible, the Etherian Prime Minister whispered. No species shares military technology with potential enemies. That's exactly the problem, Marcus said. As long as every species treats every other species as a potential enemy, the galaxy will always be one crisis away from total war. As long as technological advancement is hoarded and used as a weapon, progress will always be limited by fear. He straightened his tie one final time, and for the first time, the gesture seemed genuinely nervous rather than calculated. Humanity is proposing something different. A galactic community, based on cooperation rather than competition, shared technological development instead of zero-sum resource conflicts, collective security that doesn't require anyone to submit to anyone else's authority. The Granathi stone speaker's voice rumbled like an earthquake. And if we refuse? If we choose to maintain the current order? Marcus's expression didn't change, but somehow his presence seemed to fill the chamber with quiet menace. Then humanity will withdraw from galactic civilization entirely. We'll relocate our populations to areas beyond the reach of any current technology, and we'll continue developing in isolation until we achieve capabilities that make our current advantages look primitive. The silence stretched until it became physically uncomfortable. And then, in a few centuries, when the galactic order inevitably collapses under the weight of its own contradictions, we'll return to pick up the pieces. But by then, the gap between human capabilities and everyone else's will be so vast that cooperation won't be possible anymore. Marcus looked around the chamber one final time. This is your choice. Join us in building something better, or watch us leave to build it ourselves. 3 months later, the galaxy was a very different place. Dr. Elena Vasquez floated in the zero-gravity laboratory aboard the joint Human-Etherian Research Station, watching in fascination as her Etherian colleague manipulated exotic matter with techniques that would have been impossible just weeks ago. The station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, human quantum, architecture providing the structural framework, while Etherian energy manipulation systems powered the entire facility. The resonance frequencies are stabilizing, reported HFY. The gaseous beings form contained within a specially designed interaction field that allowed precise manipulation of physical objects. The integration of human singularity containment with our plasma dynamics is exceeding theoretical projections by 12%. Elena made notes on her quantum tablet, still amazed by how quickly everything had changed. The technology sharing program that Marcus Chen had announced to the inner circle had transformed not just scientific research, but the entire basis of galactic civilization. Species that had hoarded knowledge for millennia were suddenly working together on projects that none of them could have accomplished alone. Dr. Vasquez, came a voice from the station's communication system. You have an incoming transmission from the Galactic Coordination Committee. Elena sighed. The GCC, humanity's proposed replacement for the old Galactic Council, was still finding its footing. Instead of the hierarchical structure that had dominated the galaxy for so long, the new organization was based on voluntary cooperation and consensus building. It was messy, chaotic, and incredibly inefficient compared to the old system. It was also working. Put it through, Elena said. The holographic display materialized, showing the familiar face of Marcus Chen. But instead of his diplomatic suit, he now wore the simple blue coveralls of a maintenance worker, his hands stained with grease from whatever mechanical project he'd been working on. Dr. Vasquez, Marcus said with a smile. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Just revolutionizing physics, Elena replied dryly. What can we do for you, Mr. Ambassador? Or should I say Mechanic Chen? Marcus laughed. Just Marcus is fine. I'm actually calling about the Vega System project. We've run into some unexpected complications. Elena's expression grew serious. The Vega System project was one of the most ambitious undertakings in galactic history. An attempt to terraform an entire star system using cooperative technology from 17 different species. It was intended as a proof of concept for the new galactic order, a demonstration that cooperation could achieve things that competition never could. What kind of complications? She asked. The good kind, Marcus replied. The project is working too well. We're achieving terraforming rates that are about 5 times faster than our most optimistic projections. The problem is that we're running out of species willing to relocate to the new worlds fast enough to keep up with the habitable area we're creating. Elena blinked in surprise. That's actually a wonderful problem to have. It is, but it's also causing some political tensions. Some of the older species are concerned that we're moving too fast, changing too much too quickly. They're worried about cultural preservation and traditional ways of life. Elena nodded thoughtfully. This was one of the ongoing challenges of the new galactic order. While younger species and forward-thinking individuals had embraced the cooperative model enthusiastically, many established civilizations were struggling to adapt to such rapid change. "What's the human response?" she asked. Marcus shrugged. "Same as always. We slow down and work with people at whatever pace they're comfortable with. The whole point of this new system is that no one gets left behind and no one gets forced to do anything they don't want to do, even if it means taking longer to achieve our goals." "Elena," Marcus said, his expression growing serious, "humanity spent 2 centuries preparing for a war we hoped would never happen. We can spend a few extra years making sure that everyone feels comfortable with the peace we're trying to build." The transmission ended, and Elena turned back to her research with renewed focus. The conversation had reminded her of something that many species were still struggling to understand about humanity: their seemingly infinite patience when it came to long-term planning. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out as human advisors, researchers, and engineers worked alongside alien colleagues on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. The technology sharing program had created an explosion of innovation and cooperation that was transforming every aspect of galactic civilization. But perhaps more importantly, it was changing how species thought about each other. On the Kralian homeworld, War Marshal Jektar stood in a human-designed training facility, watching as Kralian warriors learned to use weapons that had been freely shared rather than captured in battle. The humans had not only provided the technology, but had sent instructors to ensure it was used safely and effectively. "It still seems impossible," Jektar confided to his human counterpart, Admiral Sarah Vega. "No species in our history has ever shared military technology with former enemies." Sarah smiled. "That's because every species in galactic history has thought in terms of former enemies. Humans prefer to think in terms of future allies." The Kralian's compound eyes glittered with what might have been confusion. "But surely you must have concerns about arming species that could potentially turn against you." "Of course we do," Sarah admitted. "But we also have something that's more powerful than any weapon: the knowledge that cooperation is more profitable than conflict for everyone involved." She gestured toward the training facility, where Kralian and human soldiers were working together to master technology that neither species could have developed alone. "Every piece of technology we share makes everyone stronger, including us. Every cooperative project creates economic and social ties that make conflict less likely. Every joint research initiative produces discoveries that benefit everyone." Jektar watched a Kralian weapons specialist successfully integrate human quantum targeting systems with traditional Kralian particle cannons, creating a hybrid weapon more effective than anything either species had possessed independently. "And if someday a species does turn against humanity?" he asked. Sarah's smile took on a slightly predatory edge. "Then they'll discover that the technology we've shared is only a small fraction of what we've actually developed. Remember, we spent centuries learning to be underestimated. We're not about to forget that lesson just because we're trying to build a peaceful galaxy." The implications were clear. Humanity's technological sharing program, while genuine, was also the most sophisticated security strategy in galactic history. By freely distributing advanced technology, they were creating a galaxy where everyone had a vested interest in maintaining peaceful cooperation. Species that might have been tempted to challenge human dominance found themselves dependent on human innovations for their continued prosperity. Meanwhile, deep in human space, research continued on projects that remained classified. Not because humanity wanted to maintain military superiority, but because some technologies were simply too dangerous to release until galactic civilization was mature enough to handle them. Responsibly, Dr. James Harrison stood before a containment field that held what appeared to be a small, perfectly spherical object. To most observers, it would have seemed unremarkable, just a smooth, metallic ball about the size of a marble. But the readings on his instruments told a very different story. "Status report," he said to his research team. "Dimensional anchor is holding steady," reported his assistant. "The pocket universe remains stable at approximately 1 light-year diameter. Internal conditions are nominal for carbon-based life." Harrison nodded. The sphere contained an entire miniature galaxy, complete with stars, planets, and carefully designed ecosystems. It was humanity's backup plan, a portable civilization that could be activated if the main galaxy ever became uninhabitable. "Any word from the Council Committee on whether we should reveal the dimensional engineering program?" Harrison asked. "Not yet," his assistant replied. "The consensus seems to be that most species aren't ready for technology that can create pocket universes. Too much potential for abuse." Harrison understood the caution. The same technology that could create portable worlds could also be used to trap entire civilizations in dimensional prisons. Humanity had learned to be very careful about which innovations they shared and when. "Keep monitoring," he said. "Someday, when the galaxy is ready, this technology will help us explore beyond the boundaries of normal space-time. But until then, we wait." Patience, as always, was humanity's greatest weapon. 5 years after the revelation, as historians were already calling it, the galaxy had settled into a new rhythm. The old Galactic Council chambers had been converted into a museum, while the new Galactic Coordination Committee operated from a mobile platform that rotated between different star systems, ensuring that no single species or location dominated the decision-making process. Marcus Chen stood at the observation deck of the GCC platform, looking out at the latest marvel of cooperative engineering, a Dyson sphere constructed around a red giant star using technologies contributed by 12 different species. The massive structure would provide clean energy for thousands of worlds while serving as a research station for projects that required truly massive amounts of power. "Remarkable, isn't it?" came a familiar voice behind him. Marcus turned to see High Arbiter Kel'Thuzad approaching, the ancient being's form now displaying modifications that incorporated human quantum processing systems. The integration had been voluntary, part of the ongoing project to enhance interspecies communication and understanding. "It is," Marcus agreed, "though I have to admit 5 years ago I wasn't sure we'd ever reach this point." Kel'Thuzad's mechanical appendages clicked softly as it processed the statement. "You had doubts about humanity's plan?" Marcus smiled. "I had doubts about everyone else's willingness to embrace it. Change is hard, especially when you've been doing things the same way for thousands of years." The two beings stood in comfortable silence, watching as construction ships from 17 different species worked together to complete the final sections of the Dyson sphere. The site would have been impossible under the old system, where such projects would have been dominated by a single species and used to maintain power over others. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you," Kel'Thuzad said eventually. "Was any of it real?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I'm not sure what you mean." "The fear, the uncertainty, the apparent technological limitations. When humanity first made contact with galactic civilization, was there any genuine element of a young species trying to find its place among the stars? Or was it all calculated performance from the beginning?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer carefully. "Both," he said finally. "The first human explorers who encountered other species were genuinely amazed, overwhelmed, and more than a little frightened. But they were also following protocols that had been established decades earlier, designed specifically for that moment." He turned away from the observation window to face the ancient being directly. "Humanity has always been good at learning from others' mistakes. We studied the history of every species that had ever been conquered, absorbed, or eliminated by more advanced civilizations. We identified the common factors that led to their downfall, and those factors were pride, mostly. Young species that encountered advanced civilizations almost always made the same mistake. They tried to prove they were equals before they actually were equals. They revealed their full capabilities too early, demanded respect they hadn't earned, or challenged systems they didn't understand." Marcus gestured toward the Dyson sphere construction. "Humanity decided to take a different approach. We would appear weak until we were actually strong, seem divided until we were actually unified, and act primitive until we were actually advanced. It required tremendous discipline and patience, but it gave us something no other young species ever had: time." Kel'Thuzad processed this information with mechanical precision. Time to what? Time to understand. Time to prepare. Time to develop not just technology but wisdom. Time to figure out not just how to survive contact with advanced civilizations, but how to improve upon the systems those civilizations had created. The High Arbiter's sensors focused on Marcus with newfound appreciation. The Galactic Council system had lasted for over 50,000 years. Most species considered it the pinnacle of political evolution. Marcus nodded, and in many ways it was remarkably successful. It maintained peace across most of the galaxy, facilitated trade and communication between vastly different species, and prevented the kind of large-scale conflicts that could have devastated entire sectors. But it was also stagnant. The same species remained in control for millennia. The same technologies dominated for centuries without significant innovation. The same problems persisted without real solutions. The Council had achieved stability but at the cost of progress. Marcus turned back to the observation window, where the Dyson sphere was nearing completion ahead of schedule. Humanity looked at the galactic situation and saw enormous potential being wasted. Thousands of species with unique perspectives and capabilities, all locked into a rigid hierarchy that discouraged innovation and cooperation. So you decided to change everything. We decided to offer an alternative, not through conquest or revolution, but through demonstration. We showed the galaxy what was possible when species worked together as equals, rather than competing for dominance. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Marcus activated the communication system, and the familiar face of Admiral Sarah Vega appeared on the holographic display. "Marcus," she said, "we've just received word from the Deep Space Exploration Committee. The joint human-voidling expedition has made contact with something unusual near the Galactic core." Marcus felt a familiar sensation, the same mixture of excitement and caution that had defined humanity's approach to the unknown for centuries. Define unusual. Artificial structures on a scale that makes our Dyson sphere look like a child's toy. Energy signatures that suggest technology beyond anything in our current understanding. And response patterns that indicate intelligence but not from any species we recognize. Marcus exchanged a look with Kel'Thuzad. First contact with unknown intelligences had always been one of the scenarios human planners had prepared for. But the reality was still sobering. "Recommendations?" Marcus asked. "The same as always," Sarah replied. "Slow, careful approach. Maximum cooperation between all species. And above all, we listen before we speak and learn before we act." Marcus nodded. "Approved. And Sarah, make sure every species is represented in the contact team. If we're about to meet someone new, they should see the galaxy at its best." The transmission ended, and Marcus turned back to Kel'Thuzad. "Well, it looks like humanity's long-term planning is about to face its biggest test yet." The ancient being's mechanical appendages clicked with what might have been amusement. "Indeed. Though I suspect that whatever we encounter at the galactic core will find the current galaxy very different from what previous explorers might have expected." Marcus smiled. "That's the idea. Instead of meeting a galaxy divided by competition and fear, they'll encounter a civilization based on cooperation and mutual respect. Instead of having to choose sides in some ancient conflict, they'll be invited to contribute to a community that's stronger because of its diversity." He straightened, his tie, a habit that had become legendary throughout the galaxy, as a signal that humanity was about to do something significant. "Besides, if there's one thing humanity has learned from our experience with galactic civilization, it's that first impressions matter, and the impression we want to give is that the galaxy has finally grown up." As they watched, the final components of the Dyson sphere locked into place, and the massive structure began its initial power-up sequence. Energy readings spiked across the electromagnetic spectrum, as 17 different technologies integrated seamlessly into a single, magnificent whole it was, Marcus reflected. A perfect metaphor for what the galaxy had become. Different species, different technologies, different perspectives, all working together to create something greater than any of them could have achieved alone. The galaxy, that had once tried to eliminate humanity, for being too dangerous, had instead been transformed by humanity into something it had never been before. A true community of equals, united not by fear or domination, but by the simple recognition that cooperation was always stronger than competition, And as reports continued to arrive from the Galactic core about the mysterious new intelligences waiting to be contacted, Marcus Chen allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for the unknown. Now it was time to find out what the unknown had been preparing for them. The stars stretched endlessly before them, full of possibilities that no single species could explore alone. But together, as the united civilizations of the galaxy, there was no limit to what they might discover. Death had indeed worn a suit to the Galactic Council. But in the end, what emerged from that encounter wasn't destruction. It was transformation, cooperation, and the birth of something truly unprecedented in galactic history. The Age of Empires was over. The Age of Community had begun, and humanity, the species that had learned to be patient, had finally found their place among the stars.